Guys, welcome back to another episode of Intothewestcomics, or installment of Intothewestcomics, a new comic book day edition, Sonny.
Hey.
We got you over here at the table. We got a lot of, it's hot outside, but it's hot in here too. We got a lot of
Hey girl.
hot new Hey Girl books
Hey girl. Hey.
for you to check out. Hey Girl, go see
Hey.
Barbie. Marcus is here. Brother Marcus joins the table.
Brother Mark.
Looking good.
Hello.
The hot dog, corn dog Paul's here.
Yep.
The hair is looking,
He's doing his
dude,
thing.
like morphing into like a I don't know.
I like when he says your hair is voluptuous.
It is voluptuous, dude.
Yeah,
like
he's
the
got good
back
hair.
in the back right now.
Luscious
He's
locks.
in the background now.
He's got.
In the background now. Anyways, we're talking about comic
Uh,
books.
We are talking about comic books, and I'm very interested to see what you guys have today.
In the background now.
Who wants
anyways.
to go? You want to do a coin toss, or Marcus want to start? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
Tails.
Marcus, you go first.
Oh, yeah. Oh. All right. Right on.
I don't know why.
Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone who's watching out there. There's a new image title that just came out. We're 2 issues in that I think is really, really good. It's catered to more of the for musicians, especially if you're into jazz and you're into the history of jazz.
Nice.
This is a fictional title based around the history of jazz. It's called Deep Cuts.
Ooh.
We are 2 issues in at the moment, so I brought 2 today just for
Both covers look
both
really
covers.
cool.
Yeah,
What a guy. Oh, those look like larger issues though.
they are. It's a 6-issue miniseries, and they're all oversized issues.
Oh, okay, yeah.
This is issue 1, and this is issue 2, and both are independent of each other in terms of story. It is a collaboration between Kyle Higgins and Joe Clark.
Oh, nice.
And essentially, the first issue is you're following a little kid by the name of Ace, who's a clarinet player.
Cool.
His father has passed away, who was a career clarinet player down in New Orleans. And he lives with his grandmother. His mother is not around. I guess she abandoned him or what have you. And so you see some of his struggles as he tries to pursue basically the same dream as his father. People know of his father. He gets hooked up with a kind of like a flashy sort of, social butterfly of a guy who knows everywhere. He goes and plays around all over town, and he does like the little street parades that they do and things like that. And so he tries to get him to help him out because he wants gigs. He's a kid trying to make a name for himself, and he's learning clarinet. And it's really good because there's some panels in there that I kid you not, scene by scene, I'm like, oh God, that happened to me when I was kind of coming up.
Oh, that's awesome.
Learning,
Yeah.
the bass and trying to get out there and gig and trying to, you're put in these situations and then they're like, hey, all right, so do you know this song? And you're like, no, I don't know. I wouldn't. Do you know this song? All right. Well, if you don't know, okay, it's an E flat. You'll pick it up. You'll hear it. And I was just like, oh my God, that's just like every gig I've had. It's like, well, especially when you're young and you're just trying to find out,
Find your way.
Find your way. So it was very relatable, very heartfelt, very thoughtful. They obviously did a lot of research because it definitely feels very authentic in some of the jazz
That's so cool.
history that's in there.
Feels real New Orleans.
Yes. And the art is incredible.
The art is amazing. The art stand out.
Very pencily, kind of watercolory type. And then the second issue, pretty much you're following a different person. Her name's Gail Goldstein, and she's basically a pianist and singer, and she's trying to make her way into Broadway. This one is set in Chicago in the 1920s, and she's basically trying to find. There's a stage production that's about to start in the next week or what have you, and it has gotten to the point where even her producer and they're just like, this is terrible, this is going to be a terrible production, we need a good number or something. So she's like, hey, all right, I'm going to try to write a hit jazz song, and that can kind of salvage everything, because there's an exchange in there where she's like, between her and her producer, and she's like, well, even the crappiest theater productions, if you can tie it all up with a really good, memorable song, it'll be a hit, So she's off to try to, do her research and try to make that jazz hit because she's not really a jazz composer. So she goes around and, ventures. And
this sounds
follow her.
so good. Like, I'm actually going to have to
The
pick this up,
artwork
yeah.
in this one is a lot cooler. I don't.
Well, that's crazy because I was looking through this one and I was like, this is dynamic and
It's very dynamic,
incredible.
but open this one and it has like a whole different kind of feel to
Oh
it.
yeah.
Like the main character you can see
This
is
is
kind of
almost- like if I could make like a comparison, like this feels like Batman Year One art. This feels more like kind of Dan Mora style of art. This is a little more cartoon-ish in the way it's
more
colored.
animated.
And this is a little more like almost like
more sketchier.
sketchy, like almost like memory.
Yeah,
Like it's
Right.
like a memory.
yeah.
These are really dope.
And
Very
like how
nostalgic feel.
you were talking about how like she doesn't really necessarily fit in as a jazz performer and she's trying to navigate her way, and you can tell by her character design that she almost doesn't fit in like the
Right.
scene, or like she doesn't
Yeah.
fit into the panel almost.
Right.
So I like that little segment. That's really cool. I like that a lot.
Yeah, you basically have this young, I think she's Jewish. You have this young Jewish lady. She's in, Broadway theater. And then she's going into some of these shady neighborhoods that where jazz is being played, and she's trying to pick up what she can from different characters. And
That's super cool.
it's very cool.
This is very
So
I like
yeah,
that a lot.
So yeah, I highly recommend that for both musicians and non-musicians alike. It's very good. Shout out to Dan at Cosmic Comics. He's the one who actually put me on to this because I didn't even know about it, and then he told me about it, and I was like, oh, okay, cool, right on, Dan.
And it's
then-
Kyle Higgins not doing Power Rangers.
Yeah,
yeah.
That's crazy, right?
that was very
There you go.
very surprising. So it must be mostly Joe Clark. Okay, so and the next one, the next two I have trades here. This one is by the Venom, what I call the Venom Dream Team, Donnie Cates and Ryan Stegman.
Yeah.
And man, this is amazing. So it's a character design that looks like that. Was it Of the Darkness? I forget what it is, but he looks very similar to the character design of another work. But basically, you have
He
this.
kind of looks like the kid from Brightburn a little bit. I have the
That's
first two
little bit,
issues.
little
whole
bit.
vibe I was
Yeah.
getting.
I
was
have the
kid from
first two
Brightburn.
issues of that run.
Yeah, because some of the characters in there are kind of reminiscent of different characters. Like there's one guy who looks like kind of like more like a Damian Wayne sort of vibe, But it's an indie.
Oh,
It's an indie
first
comic.
page.
Yep. And so it's another image title by Donnie Cates and Ryan Stegman on art. Absolutely fun, over the top, and it's basically you have a mystical realm called Everkeep, which is basically like a magic school. So you kind of have like a Harry Potter sort of feel, but it's different. It gets
A lot
destroyed.
darker.
It gets destroyed by Baron Vanish, who's the guy pictured in the front of the cover, and everyone who survives the struggle scatters and assumes different identities. And so one of the guys, he's like really has drunk. He's has a lot of alcohol problems and all that kind of stuff. And he's married to one of his former students or classmates. And and they end up finding some of the remnants of that organization that like destroyed the school. And so you see that, that conflict and all that. And it's really cool. I don't want to give too much away because it's still ongoing. This is the first trade paperback. It's out. It collects the first 4 issues. I think we're on issue 5 or 6 right now, single issue wise. And then the trade, volume 2 of the trade paperback is scheduled.
I have
to come out soon.
1 and 2 of the issues 1 and 2, and it just kind of got lost in the noise, but it was very good.
Yes.
And the,
So
obviously.
it reminds me of just kind of how you were describing the story, and I'm flipping through the artwork. It kind of reminds me of like Harry Potter meets The Boys almost. Like it was
In terms of-
very raw. It's very over the top. Like there's going to be magic, but
that's
like
a
there's
great
also like
comparison, yeah.
you see someone's head getting smushed by something. You know what I mean? So
Right.
it's extremely raw, and that's all my style. I'm
I think you would super dig this.
someone madman's trying to take over some overpowering threat. So
Right. Maybe
looks
some
really
like
cool.
maybe like some Invincible vibes to it.
Definitely
just
some
because of
Invincible
all the
vibes.
gore.
Yeah.
There's another. You know what character this reminds me of in at least visually? Not that they look the same, but they give the same kind of vibe.
Vibes.
The Jorge Jimenez and Mark Millar character. They're doing a new run for him.
Nemesis.
Nemesis.
Yeah.
It reminds me of Nemesis. I don't love the Nemesis comic. I think it's a little too over the top, but this character design, Nemesis is a dope looking character, and this reminds me of that.
Yeah. Maybe that might be the one I'm thinking.
Nemesis is like all white, but it's
okay.
the same kind of vibe.
Oh, Mark Miller, I think, writes that one. Nemesis.
Yeah, Mark Miller, and it's Jorge Jimenez is artist on most of it.
Right. Yeah, that's a grimy one.
Yeah,
that was like, ooh,
that one gets a little political too, and it's like, all right,
yeah,
some people are gonna love this, and some people are gonna hate it.
Yeah. So, and then finally, this one I think did kind of get lost in the noise, but this one is called Junkyard Joe, and it is a collaboration between Gary Frank and Jeff Johns. Another Image title. It's great. Yeah, Junkyard Joe. So it follows. It starts off following. You're basically you're being presented a story of a bunch of Vietnam vets. They're in the thick of it, and then all of a sudden this mysterious humanoid sort of robot comes into play. At first he looks like a human who just doesn't talk, and then as he's getting jacked up and shot at,
that's dope.
You like the Terminator, you start seeing the pieces of his exoskeleton and all that. And essentially, you find that he was part of a secret government project that was put a kibosh, and they rendered it kibosh because they thought he was too dangerous. But in fact, he was actually pretty intelligent. He killed only the people who were against his group, and they thought he was killing everyone. And so you see him in the thick of it and all that. And then as one of the guy, his name is Muddy, the survivors of that group that pretty much was wiped out except for him and Junkyard Joe, as what they called him. He's approached while he's in the hospital, and they're like, hey, we want to talk about this person. You keep saying you saw a robot, come and help us. And then the doctors are like, you shouldn't say anything, otherwise we're gonna have to get you out of here a different kind of way, So he kind of keeps it a secret, and then he eventually fast forwards years later, he's an old man. He actually ends up drawing and writing a comic book called Junkyard Joe in the daily newspapers, and it becomes very popular. And then it fast forwards again to basically his wife dies, and because he would use her as a way to pitch the stories that he would do on a weekly basis for the newspaper, and she dies, so he retires from it, and then Junkyard Joe finds him. And he's like, oh, you really were real. I thought I was crazy this whole time, because he had started convincing himself that it didn't exist.
It didn't happen.
Yeah. And so this Shadow Death Squad turns out to be one of the inventors of him, goes looking for him, and they're killing everybody in the path, in their way, trying to find Junkyard Joe.
It looks really cool.
Did Johns and Frank do that before or after Geiger?
This is actually in the Geiger universe.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah,
okay. I'm glad I brought that up.
Time.
Yes.
It's close.
The very last page, you actually see Geiger zap in time, like he had like a little time thing. He zaps in, and he's like, "Oh, not yet," or something. He says, and then he comes back, and you see
that's cool.
You see Geiger, like half of his face, and then you see the multiple-headed dog, the 3-headed dog that he had. And then that's how it ends.
I really like it.
And you're like,
So this right here is
that's the Spawn variants that were happening.
Dude, what?
And the Platoon homage. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So yeah, it's part of that Geiger universe timeline.
I gotta get on that then.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Super
1 through
cool.
6. 1 through 6.
That feels like kind of like Frank and John's version of Lemire and I can't remember his name, the artist on Black Hammer. This feels like Jeff Johns and Gary Frank's Black Hammer universe, but for them, the Geiger universe. And I think that's super cool that they're doing their own stuff like that. And Mad Ghost, his production company, that's Jeff Johns. Anytime you see that, that's produced by Jeff Johns.
That's sick, man.
So good.
Those all sound super cool. I'm definitely gonna get on the deep cuts. Those sound, and they're like
you got some good today.
Yeah, I know. Sparked a lot of conversation.
I know, for real. So what do you have?
I'm going to start with World's Finest 17. It is the conclusion of kind of the AI battle that had been going on. The main villain is New Mazo, which is one of the only things I don't like about the run. It's not a very inspired name. But he is capable of taking heroes' powers and using them for himself. And this is kind of the culmination of that. Batman almost gets killed by him, so all the heroes have to come and like fight him. But by doing that, they give him all the power. And they're talking to T.O. Morrow, who is a brilliant scientist who they didn't get in to like help create New Mazo. He managed to hide, but he was like, there's no way to stop him. You can't. Present or future, there's no way to stop him. And Batman's like, there's something he didn't say. And they end up using something from the past, not out of time, but the original Amazo is kind of the weapon they use to stop him. And it's Amazo's lack of intelligence that New Mazo has. the old Amazo won't stop. He's going to continue fighting, and he overloads new Amazo. And then Metamorpho, who was the guy was at the start of this run, who they framed for doing what new Amazo did, deals the final blow to new Amazo.
And it all comes full circle.
The art is incredible. The storytelling is incredible. I'm really excited for there's 2 new stories coming up. The next 2 arcs. Boy Thunder, who was in one of the earlier arcs, and at the end he ran into Magog, who is the villain in Kingdom. Not villain, but he is a character in Kingdom Come.
Yeah.
And it's gonna kind of be. It shows Batman and Superman in their Kingdom Come stuff, drawn by Dan Mora.
Sick.
I cannot wait for that arc.
Sick.
This arc was super dope.
Oh yeah, and real quick, the Darkness. That was the character I was
Oh,
thinking.
there you go.
The Darkness. That's what
Oh,
he kind.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
what he kind of looks like. The Darkness comic character.
Yes.
Yes,
absolutely.
Very
Yeah.
much so.
Yeah. So I was like, there it is. Okay. All right,
And
sorry.
then, no, you're good. And then I have the American Vampire Volume 1, written by Scott Snyder and Stephen King, with art from Raphael Albuquerque. This is the story that got Scott Snyder on the map. This is his tour de force. This is what put him in the position he was able to be in to write Batman and to write death metals. It's
That's
a
cool.
story of an American vampire. Skinner Sweet in the late 1800s. He's not a good guy. He is by no means. He is arrested, and there's a train crash, and he's gonna get away. But one of the older British men on this train is a vampire, is a British vampire, and he bites him, but bleeds on him because he had been shot. And in this universe, when your blood goes from one vampire's blood goes to another to turn them into it, especially if they're like American, British, you evolve. So the British vampires cannot go out during the day. The American vampires can, but they have a weakness when there is, how every once in a while the moon won't be in the sky.
Right.
On nights like that, the American vampires are at their weakest. And Skinner Sweet, the story takes place in 1925, but the preamble is the 1800s thing.
Right.
There is a girl who he turns into the second American vampire, because he didn't turn anybody. He wanted to be special. He's the only guy. But he turns this girl, and this girl, if it wasn't for this girl, I honestly don't know if I'd love this comic very much, because a lot of the characters are very unlikable. Even Skinner Sweet, the main American vampire, he's a bad guy. He's not a good person.
Right.
But neither are the British vampires. But she is an altruistic and good person, and
That's
the guy
cool.
she's with is, and she kind of has a love story with Skinner Sweet, but it's action, over the top, super cool, interesting story. And I'd been reading this off for a very long time, and it was very worth it. And I very much enjoyed it. I'm probably going to grab volume 2. And the way it works is there's one story that's Scott Snyder. The next story is Stephen King. One story, Scott Snyder, or not story, but issue.
Right.
Scott Snyder, Stephen King, so on and so forth. And this was everything I'd hoped it would be when I heard about it all that time ago and finally got to it.
So Snyder was the first one?
Snyder.
How it goes?
It's Snyder, and it's always going to be Snyder and then King. It tells you at the beginning which story is which.
Okay.
So you'll know who wrote what. If you want to
Yeah,
look at it, you want.
The Omnis are out as well. 2
Yes.
volumes. If those are.
I know I saw when I got it the other day, volume 1 and volume 2 of the hardcovers. You can grab those if you want to do it like that. If you're not sure if you want to spend money on an Omni yet,
True.
you can do it like that. And then the last book I'm going to talk about is a book I never read but always knew about and knew it was what, ironically enough, Black Mirror is to Scott Snyder, his tryout for Batman. Arkham Asylum, A Serious House on Serious Earth. This is one of the most influential Batman comics. If you've played the Arkham Asylum video game, this is that. This is where that story comes from.
Sick.
And it is a horror comic unlike any superhero comic you have read before or after. There is not a comic I could compare this to other than horror movies.
Right.
It is
Very
Batman,
abstract, very surreal artwork. Yeah.
and it's basically the inmates take over Arkham. Batman's got to go in. And the reason he goes in, Gordon's
That's
like, we could
sick.
just send a SWAT team in. And Batman's like, no,
Yeah,
I need to
right.
go because I need to know that once those doors shut behind me in the asylum, I won't feel at home.
Yeah.
He's afraid he belongs there. And by the end, there's it's a terrifying, it's a rated R comic too.
Oh,
It's,
nice.
it's
I think
violent.
Joker asks for him, doesn't he?
Yes, he asks for him. He says, because they're making demands. He's like, they're making weird demands. We want dolls. We want furniture, this, that, and the other thing. And then finally, when Batman shows up, they're like, we want Batman. Joker's like, we want you, Batman. We'll let all the hostages go. And Gordon's like, we don't got to do that. Batman's like, yeah, I will.
Of course.
And there ends up being this terrifying game of hide and seek. Batman is forced to play. And then Batman puts his faith in Harvey Dent at the end of it. And it's one of the best moments in any comic that, there's not one much better. I think it's one of the coolest moments. And it proves that Arkham Asylum actually might be working. And it might actually be worth it. Definitely, this is one of the strangest, most terrifying comics art-wise and writing-wise. Amadeus Arkham's story is haunting and terrifying enough on its own. He is the psychiatrist for a criminally insane individual who killed people, but he was raped and abused as a child. And Amadeus Arkham is like, so this is what we treat these people like criminals when they're clearly wounded. Eventually, this guy breaks out, kills Amadeus Arkham's family, and Amadeus Arkham, goes nuts. It's a haunting story from start to finish. Both that and Gothic, which is another one I love from Grant Morrison before he had his big run, are fantastic comics. And that's what I've got for today.
And funny enough is Dean McKean wasn't even the first choice for art. It was actually Brian Bolland. And,
Killing Joke.
Yeah, it was going to be, he wanted to kind of do a continuation of Killing Joke with it in that style. And
I'm glad they went with what they did,
Yeah, so that was kind of
good.
And this might have been his breakout thing. Dave McKean, this might have been his breakout
I would imagine,
thing. Yeah.
There's a lot of really good suggestions. I'm going to kind of go rapid fire as we wrap up here. I really enjoyed the artwork for this Hot Girl. This is probably the first thing I've read from that Dawn of the DC that I haven't really cared for as far as story, but the artwork,
just to check it out.
I thought was incredible. Otto Schmidt variant cover there. That was really cool.
Nice.
As far as the Night Terror stuff goes, I finally had a week where I didn't get a Dustin Gwinn variant cover.
Oh, really?
But I did get the Night Terror's Nightwing. This is something that we're getting Nightwing every week. So I picked that up. That was
nice.
It's trippy.
Cool.
He's spending time being like in a haunted version of the Haley Circus and spending time with
Becky Cloonan's a good writer.
Becky Cloonan,
she's great.
It was really well written. Really cool story. Again, very spooky. A lot of this Night Terror stuff is it's good horror stuff.
It's creepy.
It's very creepy vibes. This is something that we mentioned. Josh Williamson. It seems like almost every week is one of our writers that we're really enjoying. Night Terrors, Superman #1 by Williamson. The contrast in art styles where you're trying to figure out if like this is actually taking place in Clark's his dream world or if this is actually taking place in his everyday life. Really good storytelling with this one and a little bit of a twist at the end. This has been mentioned as one of the things that could be going on continuing into the main DC storyline after Night Terrors wraps up next month. It's only a 2-month event, Marcus.
Right.
And then if you are a Titans fan, you guys know that I like Teen Titans and New Titans and all those Titans things. I'm a sucker for cornrows and manicured toes. Art Germ covers when the way he draws hose. The Starfire is on the cover right here. Beautiful Art Germ cover. Art Germ, I love you. I'm hoping to see you soon and get a sketch. You guys got to check that out. It's great. It's great artwork. They're all like single stories. There's going to be a Donna Troy story, Changeling, and I think the next issue is Raven. That's going to be a mini-series that they're doing. It doesn't have anything to do with the continuity that's going on with the Night Terrors, but still fun stories and a lot of really great artwork. We're talking about all the art that we've been taking out of this stuff that we've been checking out.
It has
a lot of great artwork this week. So
it has not disappointed whatsoever. Dawn of DC has not disappointed.
I completely forgot to say this one thing about Serious House on Serious Earth. This collected edition has a copy of Grant Morrison's first draft of the comic in the back of it, and that was really cool to read where the story started and where it came from. Sorry, I didn't want to neglect to mention that.
Guys, these are our suggestions. We're not saying that they're the right suggestions. They're just our suggestions. We would just hope that you'd be inspired or motivated to make a trip down to your local LCS and pick up some comics. Go read some comics. It is 300 degrees outside. Last I checked on my phone, it's very hot. People are stealing cameras and doors and everything else. So make sure you get to your LCS and pick up some comic books. Go read some comics and eat some pizza and go watch Barbie and Oppenheimer this weekend. All right. Oppenheimer. Barbenheimer. But guys, have a great evening. We love you. And we'll be back next week with even more books to talk to you about.
Yeah.
Take
care, everyone. Happy reading.
Later. See you next week.